Okay, so when you think about medieval Europe, what's the image that usually comes to mind? For a lot of people, I think it's a world where women had pretty limited public roles,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Mostly confined to the home, maybe, and education, largely for men. That's kind of the standard picture.
It absolutely is, yeah. And look, for a lot of Christian Europe back then, that picture wasn't too far off the mark.
Right. So here's where it gets really interesting. Prepare for a bit of a contrast, because our sources today take us somewhere completely different. 10th century Córdoba, the capital of Muslim Spain, al-Andalus.
A truly vibrant place.
And the picture there, radically different when it comes to women's intellectual life, their public life even. They weren't just sort of participating, they were actually thriving.
It's a remarkable story, really.
Yeah.
And it challenges, profoundly challenges so many assumptions we might have today about gender, about power, about knowledge in Islamic history.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack the specific stories, the factors in society that allowed women in Al-Andalus to reach such prominence.
And maybe tackle some of those stereotypes head on.
Yeah, and ask why these incredible stories are frankly often overlooked now. So let's dig in.
Okay, so the first thing to grasp is just how stark that contrast is. You mentioned Christian Europe. Women there often seen almost as property, part of these feudal systems.
Right, very rigid structures.
Very. But then you look at 10th century Cordoba, and it's just a different world for women in many ways.
So when you say different world, what are we talking about specifically? The sources mention quite a range of activities, don't they? Not just domestic stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Women in Al-Andalus, they were studying, yes, but also teaching, writing poetry, managing government documents.
Government documents, seriously.
Seriously. And even, remarkably, serving in certain legal roles. That's quite a list.
Okay, that definitely paints a different picture. And this brings us to a really standout figure, doesn't it? Lubna of Córdoba.
Ugh, Lubna, yes. A 10th century woman whose story is just, well, it's pretty amazing.
And what makes her story even more compelling, I think, is where she started from.
Exactly. Born into slavery, which is just incredible when you consider where she ended up.
So how did she make that jump?
She rose through the palace administration, became a key secretary, a respected scholar in the Umayyad court under Caliph al-Hakam II, who was a major patron of learning.
Okay, so secretary, scholar. But was this just like taking notes? Or did she have real influence?
Oh, much more than that. She handled state correspondence, yes. Copied important manuscripts, which was a vital skill. But crucially, she also advised on legal matters, on scholarly texts.
Advised the caliph or others in the court.
Sources suggest she was highly trusted, certainly within the scholarly circles of the court. She mastered grammar, mathematics, calligraphy. Contemporary historians genuinely praised her intelligence, her leadership.
It really speaks volumes, doesn't it, that her talent was seen and valued despite her origins.
It does. And here's maybe the most stunning part. She was entrusted to manage part of the Royal Library of Córdoba.
The Royal Library, the huge one.
A very same, one of the largest, most important libraries in the world at that time. Think about what that means.
Wow. So managing a part of that, it tells you something about the value placed on knowledge, right? And maybe even a degree of meritocracy.
Absolutely. Her role is incredibly revealing. It suggests that intellectual merit, even for someone starting from slavery, could get you into a position of immense trust, authority over the intellectual heart of the caliphate, essentially. It's about intellect, sure, but also leadership, organization, on a massive scale.
And this kind of thing, this intellectual life, it wasn't just happening inside the palace, was it? Did these opportunities filter down?
No, not at all confined to the elite. The mosques in Córdoba were amazing spaces, yes, for prayer, obviously, but there were also these buzzing centers of learning, open to many.
Open to women, too.
Definitely. Women regularly attended lectures, sometimes maybe from behind curtains, sometimes in open gatherings. And it wasn't just passive learning.
They taught as well.
They did. Educated women gave lessons. We have the historian Ibn Bashkawal, who actually recorded dozens of female scholars, specifically in Al-Andalus.
Dozens. And what level are we talking? Basic literacy or?
Oh, much higher in many cases. Some women even gave what's called ijazat.
Which are?
They're basically certificates of learning.
Yeah.
Proof that you've mastered a subject sufficiently to teach it yourself.
Okay.
And get this. Some women gave these ijazat to male students.
No kidding. In what subjects?
Often in things like hadith, the sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, which are foundational for Islamic law and ethics, or law itself, or Quran recitation. These require deep, deep knowledge.
So that tells you their expertise was seriously respected.
Undeniably, it shows a level of recognition that's quite striking.
What about families? Was educating daughters seen as normal or something unusual?
The sources suggest it was actually quite common. Families would send their daughters to learn literature, Quran, arithmetic. It wasn't just seen as, useful.
More than just practical skills.
Yeah, it was often viewed as an act of piety, a way to deepen one's faith and intellect. So, both spiritual and practical value.
Okay, so we have scholars, teachers. Where else did women make their mark? Did this intellectual energy spill over into, say, public expression, maybe even criticism?
Oh, absolutely. Poetry and eloquence were hugely valued in the courts of Muslim Spain. It was a big deal.
A performance art, almost.
In a way, yes. And female poets weren't just writing in private diaries. They were competing in public literary contests, reciting their work in royal courts, getting published alongside men.
Which brings us to Walada bint al-Mustakfi. She really jumps out from the sources.
She certainly does. An 11th century noblewoman from Córdoba, famous for her sharp wit, her poetic skill, and maybe her sharp tongue, too.
Tell me more. What did she do?
Well, she hosted these intellectual salons, gatherings where men and women would come together and debate literature, politics, pretty freely.
Salons with men and women debating politics in the 11th century. That sounds radical.
It really was. And her poetry reflects this. You know that famous line attributed to her?
I am made for glory, and glory is made for me.
That's the one. It just radiates confidence, self-possession, defiance even.
So what does her poetry, her life, tell us about the norms she was pushing against?
It shows that while these opportunities existed, women like Walada were still actively carving out space. Her poetry wasn't just flowery verse. It openly criticized the male elite sometimes. It expressed an autonomy that, it shocked some of her contemporaries.
So she wasn't just reflecting the culture, she was actively shaping it, maybe even challenging it.
I think that's fair to say. Her impact wasn't just literary, it was a cultural statement, a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, so scholars, library managers, poets, salon hostesses. What about formal power? Did women hold actual legal authority? Were there female judges, qadis?
That's a key question. The sources say it was rare. But yes, women did sometimes serve as judges, qadis, in specific areas.
Specific areas like?
Particularly things concerning family law, inheritance disputes, areas where female perspective might be seen as especially relevant.
Okay, so maybe not across the board, but in certain domains.
Right. And even if not serving as the final judge, they were often consulted for fatwas.
Legal opinions.
Exactly. Especially if they were known experts in hadith, for instance. Their scholarly weight carried legal weight.
That's fascinating. And what about women standing in court generally? Could they represent themselves?
Yes. Legal texts from al-Andalus are pretty clear on this. Women could argue their own cases. They could serve as witnesses, particularly in matters involving other women.
And this was supported by the prevailing legal tradition.
It was. The Maliki school of law, which was dominant there, is often seen as being relatively progressive on women's legal rights compared to some others at the time. It provided a framework for this legal independence.
This whole picture of al-Andalus, it just seems so different from the rest of medieval Europe at the time. What made it so distinct? What were the key ingredients?
Yeah, connecting the dots, you see a few crucial factors coming together.
Yeah.
First, you had widespread urban literacy. That's huge.
Access to learning.
Exactly. Public libraries, the mosques acting as schools. Education wasn't just for a tiny clerical elite. It was more accessible.
And Córdoba itself was a unique place culturally.
Absolutely. You had Muslims, Jews, Christians living side by side interacting. That kind of cultural mixing often sparks intellectual ferment, new ideas.
A melting pot effect.
Sort of, yeah. And then you have that top-down support we mentioned. Rulers like Al-Hakam II actively sponsoring learning. And crucially, not limiting it by gender. That royal patronage was vital.
Makes sense. Anything else? Economic factors?
Definitely. Al-Andalus had a pretty vibrant trade economy. This meant women often had more control over property, over inheritance, than perhaps their counterparts in feudal Europe.
So economic independence translates to more social agency.
It often does, yeah. So you put all that together, literacy, cultural mixing, royal support, economic stability, and you get an environment quite different from Christian Europe where, as we said, feudalism often restricted women's autonomy significantly.
Okay, so given all this rich history, these amazing figures like Lubna and Walada, this whole environment, why isn't it common knowledge? Why don't we learn about this in school, generally speaking?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's striking. The popular image, especially in the West, of historical Muslim societies is often, let's be honest, quite negative,
Yeah.
particularly regarding women.
Often painted as restrictive, backward even.
Exactly. And the story of al-Andalus just completely disrupts that narrative. Yet, it gets sidelined. Consistently.
So is this just an accident of history or something more deliberate, a kind of historical silence?
I think you could argue it's more than just an oversight. For a
Mhm.
long time, you had this tradition of Western Orientalism, which often shaped how the West viewed the East, sometimes through a lens of superiority or exoticism. And within that, the intellectual contributions of Muslim women were often ignored, minimized, or simply not seen.
And that legacy continues.
To some extent, yes. Even in modern textbooks, you often find a real gap. The legacy of female scholars in Islamic history is just absent. And that silence isn't neutral, is it? It shapes how we understand not just the past, but the present, too. It's almost political in a way.
That's a powerful thought. It really challenges you to look closer. Because the women of Muslim Spain, as our sources show, they weren't just these rare exceptions. They were part of a culture that, at that time, genuinely seemed to value knowledge, wherever it came from. Gender wasn't necessarily the barrier we might assume.
Exactly right. Lubna wasn't just some assistant. She was a leader, managing a world-class library. Waletta wasn't just writing poems. She was a public intellectual, influencing culture and debate.
It's over 1,000 years ago, but these stories, they feel incredibly relevant now.
They really do. But what does it tell us? What's possible when education is truly open? When talent isn't constrained by gender? When people in power actually listen to knowledge, regardless of who it comes from?
Yeah, it definitely gives you something to think about. What potential gets unlocked when those barriers come down?
A lot to ponder, for sure. About history, and maybe about ourselves, too.